Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're jumping into a whole stack of global reports, cultural happenings, all fresh as of today, July 5th, 2025. Our mission to pull out the really important bits, the surprising links, and the key insights that help you understand what's shaping things right now, and maybe why these pieces that seem separate actually, well, fit together. Okay, let's unpack the big headlines first. We're seeing a pretty significant escalation with U.S. tariffs. President Trump announced these plans, unilateral tariffs, some ranging from 10% all the way up to a, frankly, staggering 70% starting August 1st. And Europe, they're scrambling really urgently, trying to get a trade deal done before July 9th. If not, they could face immediate hikes, maybe up to 50% on EU imports. The idea is to categorize partners, give better terms if they have preliminary deals.
Right. And what's fascinating here, I think, is how these big policy decisions, these broad strokes, they ripple down in ways you might not expect. Like, consider Montreal Comic-Con. It might actually get a boost because these trade issues make U.S. events less appealing, maybe pushing fans north to Canada. It really shows how protectionist policies can sort of unintentionally shift consumer behavior, change cultural scenes. You get these unexpected winners and losers way beyond the industries they were even targeting.
That Comic-Con ripple is really interesting. Does that specific kind of outcome, does it often surprise you? Or is it, well, almost predictable with these big trade shifts?
Well, the specific example, maybe that's a bit surprising, but the underlying idea, no, not really. Economic policy, it just rarely stays in its own box, you know. It forces these adaptations, changes in how people spend money, how markets react.
Yeah.
It's a really clear example of how interconnected everything is.
Hmm. And that interconnectedness, that idea of one thing causing waves elsewhere, it's not just trade, right? We're seeing huge shifts in energy markets, too, driven by some serious geopolitical tension. Russia just launched its largest aerial assault on Ukraine so far, over 537 drones and missiles overnight.
Yeah, and that context is absolutely vital. It's crucial when you look at OPEC plus, OPEC and their allies deciding to increase oil production. They're adding 548,000 barrels per day in August. That's actually more than people thought. And it comes right after things like the Iran-Israel conflict, the U.S. strikes on Iranian nuclear sites, these recent tensions. So it makes you ask, okay, what happens with prices if you have all this supply, but maybe demand doesn't quite keep up?
That's a really good question about supply and demand. So what do you think is the most likely way this plays out based on what we're seeing? And what's the biggest, I guess, unknown factor, the wild card?
Well, if demand really does lag behind that extra supply, you could see significant downward pressure on prices. That could destabilize economies that rely on energy exports, maybe even affect global inflation rates, or, it could be a strategic play to try and curb inflation or just balance the market after all the recent disruptions. The biggest wild card, though, it's always geopolitics. Any new escalation anywhere, really, could just completely overturn the projections.
Okay, so from those huge global dynamics, let's zoom in a bit. Let's look at some maybe more surprising, unique stories from specific places, specific cultures, starting with something pretty amazing, actually. An environmental win in Paris, the Seine River.
Yeah.
It's open for public swimming again. First time since 1923. That's just a massive milestone for water quality efforts.
It really is a testament to decades, literally decades of work, an amazing achievement for, urban sustainability. But then, on a totally different note, you see nature's other side. It's raw power. We're getting reports of deadly, catastrophic flooding down in central Texas, multiple fatalities, widespread damage. It's just such a stark contrast in how we interact with nature.
Yeah, a real contrast. And then there's this. This is quite unique. A cultural moment. A manga novel, The Future I Saw, by Ryo Tatsuki. It got reprinted back in 2021, and it actually predicted a mega earthquake would hit Japan today, July 5th, 2025.
Yeah.
Caused quite a bit of public anxiety, apparently. That certainly stirred things up, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It just highlights how deeply cultural stories, even, fictional ones, can tap into these collective fears. Especially when times feel uncertain, it really speaks to that fascinating interplay between media, public psychology, and, well, where we draw the line with reality. The power of a story to affect real-world feelings, it's always pretty remarkable.
Okay, rounding out our kind of cultural tour. Over in Croatia, the controversial nationalist rock singer Marko Perkovic Thompson. He just set a record for concert attendance in Zagreb. Drew tens of thousands of people.
Right. And that huge turnout, despite, all the controversy around him, it really points to a powerful current of national or maybe cultural identity in Croatia. It shows how certain figures can still deeply resonate, mobilize massive crowds. It reflects these complex social, maybe political feelings simmering in a region. It's a reminder that these cultural movements often have really deep roots in national stories.
So tying it all together, what does this all mean for you listening? We've covered everything from global trade wars, military actions, to surprising environmental wins like the Seine, and even pop culture predictions that seem to leak into reality.
Yeah, it really highlights just how incredibly diverse but also interconnected our world is. It shows how local things like a concert or a river cleanup can be shaped by global shifts. And the other way around, too. There's always a deeper connection there if you look closely enough.
Exactly. So as you go about your day, maybe think about that. Consider how easily one piece of news, whether it's about tariffs or a mug-up prophecy, can connect to so many other seemingly unrelated things. Keep asking those questions, keep connecting those dots, and, well, keep diving deep with us.